Cartel sits there. I told you where you Cartel is standing right here.
Right here?
Well, you don't believe me?
I believe you.
No, you didn't. You questioned my
I did not
question.
I did not question you. How can I question you? You know everything. Okay, I'm going to start the learning sponsors, gentlemen. Okay. Okay. A friend, Year of Learning, Friends of Malaskotsky, Moshe Zelig, Ben Mordechai, Martin Lippman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bat Pinchas, Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev, Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Bar Yaakov, Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Ayel Ben Yosef Kohen. Those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka Bat Meshulam Yisachar. Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinzer Bat Yosef Chaim Bakava, Hanan Ben Moshe Eliezer V'chana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi Vitzipora, Yisra Ben Yoel Moshe Cohen V'chana. Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bat Meir. Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi Ben Chaim. Marsha Brana in memory of her husband, Arav Yerachmiel Ben Shmuel. Friends and family of Arthur Ritholtz, Mordechai Yudel Ben Baruch Leib HaKohen. A month of learning by Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his mother, Dacia Gilbad Meir Halevi, also by Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his father, Meir Ben Yaakov. Ruvain and Susan Podolsky in memory of his mother, Fredel Bat Shraga Feivel. B. Pizer in memory of her sister, Rivka Bat Avraham Michal Halevi. A week of learning by the Friends of Bernie Kutz on the occasion of his second bar mitzvah. And today, the 26th of the month, by Malki and Rabbi Dr. Yankee Honig, in memory of her mother, Sosia Bat Choyner. May Hashem is having a Leah Crank, Rafia Velti, Yeshua Hashem Matzvah,
Amen. I'm going to tell you exactly. Give me 1 second, please. We open the book and we're going to start. Should be. Oh.
Study the Mishnah.
Yes, Hashem. We're on. Chav Gimel Amud Beis. You can see just about almost a little more than 3/4 down. There's the Mishnah Ezu Tam. Okay, Chav Gimel Amud Beis. Now this Mishnah is actually confused. It's obvious that Ezu Tam, really the Mishnah is talking about here, has an animal that was muad, that was forewarned, become innocent again. Ezu muad has the animal that was innocent become forewarned.
Oh, if you sell it.
If you sell it?
Yeah.
Let's see what it says.
Sell it or transfer it to somebody.
It doesn't say that here. Take a look.
No?
It says the Ezu Tam Ezu muad. What's called Tam? What's called muad? How do you become Tam if you were muad? How do you become muad if you were Tam? Muad kolshi ishi eidu bo shloshi yomim. The muad means that they testified against this animal that it gored on 3 days, three days separately. The Tam, and how does an animal become innocent after it was muad? On 3 different days, when it sees other oxen, it doesn't gore them, so it returns to its innocence. That's what Yehuda does. So Yehuda holds it has to do with days. But the Meir Omer, muad sheidu bo shel shapam. He says no. He says an animal becomes forewarned as long as it was testified against 3 times, even on the same day.
Is it the 10th or the goring 3 days?
No, it was testified. No, the test. Yeah.
The goring took part on 3 days.
No, even if the goring took part on 1 day.
That's Reb Meir.
That's what I'm reading.
Oh.
Reb Meir says what? He says muad sheidu bo shlosha pamim. Even if the goring was on 3 days, and they 3 times in 1 day, and they gored him. Okay. That's called muad. The Tom, what's called a Tom? A Tom doesn't have to have 3 times to reverse, but rather what? As long as the kids, let's say, are touching him, they're inciting him, so to speak, in a way, they bother him by touching between his horns, and he doesn't gore other people, that already automatically returns it to an innocent state. Now, I'm going to read you something in 1 minute. Rashi is unique here, and many Rishonim say he was. Chazar, etc. I'm going to read you the way Rashi reads in the beginning, but then I'm going to forget about it afterwards. We're always going to be talking about 3 times and then becoming one afterwards. Even though
does it have to be 3 days in succession?
so no, not 3 days in succession, but three. The first opinion is 3 separate days, and according to the second opinion, even 3 times in one day.
Right, I understand.
That's
Does
but
he have
not,
to be born? Does he have to be warned after each time?
yeah, that's the whole point. You have to testify. Now, right. Just three, but it has to be 3 separate days. Okay, now, so which one again? I'm about to read as if according to one opinion, an ox can become warned after 2 times. So the third time, it's automatically warned. But I'm going to drop it. I'm going to drop it immediately afterwards, just for simplicity's sake. But Rashi starts out that. My time of the Yehuda. What's the reason of Yehuda? So we're going to have an argument here. Either everyone agrees to the same thing, but they just read the psukim differently, or they really disagree. But afterwards we're going to make believe everybody agrees. Amar Abai says, how do Rabbi Yehuda learn? Because he learned the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Noda kishor nagachu mitmol shilshom." It was known that he was a goring ox from yesterday, el shilshom, the day before yesterday, or veloish renu balav, and the owners will not guard it. Shalem yishalem shor tachas hashar. He has to surely repay an ox for an ox, and the corpse is his. So now, Amar Abai, how do we deal with all these time words? So he learns like this: that how does Rabbi Yehuda learn? Tmol is 1 day. Mitmol from sometime before that day, trade, that's 2 days. And she'll show him, and 2 days before that, plus, so that's 3 days. And then he doesn't guard it. So you come now to the fourth goring, we has to pay full damages. He did more than 3 times. The way we're going to read it this way, says no. Tmol mitmol chad. He says you cannot learn 2 days. Tmol and mitmol don't make enough difference to make 2 days. That's 1 day. She'll show him, day before that, tray is 2 days. And he doesn't guard it now, so chayiv. So already, according to the way Rashi learns, Rabbi Meir, Rava, it's on the 3rd time already, but we're going to drop it after that. Rabbi Meir, my time, okay. What's the reason? Why didn't Rabbi Meir learn like Rabbi Yehuda? The Tanya, because we learned the following in the Brisa about Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says what it says the following. He has a svara. Pardon me. A new point. Why does Rabbi Meir hold that you can have 3 times in the same day? So you're going to learn it. He learns it by svara. In other words, it makes sense. Why? I say to you, listen, if when it gored on 3 separate days, the different gorings were separate, you're obligated to pay full damages. If the 3 gorings happened in 1 day, they'll call shekain all the more so. Simple svara. There's lots of ways to argue this out. But one way is simply like this. Yeah, if we're talking about the ox showing a change in its personality, one way you could say, listen, if over a period of time it establishes that, if in 1 day it gored 3 times, it's certainly showing that its nature has changed to a goring ox. Amrulay, so the rabbi said to him, now, we're going to have to look at 2 dinim quickly. You know that all of our laws today between, let's say, when a husband and wife have to separate, are really a conglomeration of 2 sets of laws from the Torah. The Torah has Nida laws and Zava laws. According to the Nida laws, when a woman sees her period, she's automatically unclean for 7 days. And the truth is, theoretically, she could bleed for all those 7 days. Doesn't matter. But she gets clean, and the next night after the 7th day, she goes to the mikveh, it's over, and she's clean. That's the law of Nida. Zava is a different law. There's a machlokas how to calculate this, but let's say 11 days following the 7 days of Nida are a period where a woman is eligible to become a Zava. If she sees in those days, she can become a Zava. If she sees 1 day or 2 days during that time, blood, so then she has to sit 1 day without any blood at all. That's unique to it. She has to have a day with no blood. If she sees 3 days, then she's called a Zava Gadola, and she has to count 7 clean days without blood before she becomes clean. So the whole idea of clean days is an idea that's to do with Zava. And the idea, and Nida has nothing to do with it. Nida, because she can bleed all 7 days. It doesn't matter. As long as she's clean, she goes to the mikveh the night of the 8th, and she's clean. Today, our laws are a conglomeration of both, because it's so hard to know who's where and who's when. So our women, for every drop of blood they see, no matter when, where, whatever, no calculations, they're always going to count 7 clean days. And that's a fail-safe that makes sure that we never transgress. That's our halacha today. But simply, so an interesting point. So you see what? So you see that a Zava, 1 day or 2 days, she doesn't become the Zava Gedola, and have to count 7 clean days and etc. But a Zava Gedola, and it has to. And what is it? it has to be what? It has to be specifically though on 3 days. So the Gemara says, so they said to Meir, you want to tell me what if an animal changes, becomes warned after 3 separate days, certainly when in the one day 3 times. You see, they said to him, Zava Tuchiach. What do you mean? A Zava will prove the rule. So Shricha Korea said to Meir, when did she become a Zava Gedola and need 7 clean days, etc.? When what?
3 days.
When it was 3 days. Carry yourself, but the same Zava, if she saw 3 times in one day, to her, she's not called, but she just has to have a clean day, but she doesn't have to have, she doesn't become a Zava Gedola. So you see the opposite, right? You see the opposite. The Gemara proves the opposite. Rabbi says, get out. He says, yes, it's true, but that's because that's a special rule, and the Torah pointed out that it's a special rule not to be applied in other places. It actually proves my point. Really, she should have become a Zava Gedola, but the Torah put an extra word where it says Vizos, when it introduced the whole chapter of Zav and Zava, a male Zav and a female Zav. It says Vizos, okay, Harizu Omer, Vizos Tia Tumasa, Bizova, etc. Okay, etc. Tumasa he, that's the rule. Shatala Kosvas, Zav Rias, Zav Yamim. There, the Torah made a special rule that no matter what, the Zav, the male Zav, it always depends on seeing and not on days. Okay, it's 3. It's in other words, right? And the Zava has to be dependent upon days. So really, on the contrary, my svar is true, and the fact that the Torah said Zos is telling that really I would have applied that svar by Zava had the Torah not told me not to. How does
she bleed 3 times in one day? And she said stops and again and
again.
Yes.
Yes.
So it doesn't make.
Yes.
What?
No,
Yes.
we're talking about 3 in one day. It's a man, not a woman, who has gonorrhea and has been oozing thrice.
No. You're right. What you said. The same thing. The Gemara's the facts are, if a woman saw 3 separate times in one day, I would have thought that she becomes a Zava Gedola, but she doesn't. That's exactly what they're talking about.
Intermittent. I mean,
It has to. Yeah, it stops. Yeah, it stops. But it happens in one day. So therefore, so they try to tell me, but really saying on the contrary, that very place is for me, not is for me and against you. I said 1 second. My the high Zos the Mute Zava Murios, but the rest of 1 second. But let's just analyze the argument. How can Rabbi Meir say that the word Zos is telling me? How is he sure that the word Zos is coming to say what? That a Zava is not dependent on sightings but on days. Why don't you say it the other way? Since that word is introduced in the whole parsha, including a Zav, a male. Now, a male, if he sees once or twice, okay, he's just tummy. But if he when he sees 3 times, then he becomes a Zav. Okay, then he becomes a Zav. No, remember I mentioned to you the problem with Zav. It's hard to know what it is. It's some kind of abnormal emission. It's not like semen. It's watery, etc. It's clearly some kind of abnormalcy. So therefore, what when he sees 3 times, he's a Zav, and therefore what he has to have 7 clean days and to bring a sacrifice. But those 3 sightings can be in one day, like we said. Okay. Now, and if there's a full day separating, okay, then you can't put together the 2 to make him a real Zav. Okay, but okay. The truth is, even if he sees twice, he has to do 7 days. Okay, just to clarify. But he doesn't have to bring sacrifices. So 1 time unclean, 2 times 7 days, 3 times 7 days, but 2 times 7 days with no sacrifice, 3 times 7 days with a sacrifice. So we said, how do you know what that the Zos is coming to limit what to say that the Zava doesn't work on sightings? Okay, he says maybe it's the other way. Maybe it's coming to tell me what that the Zav is not dependent on days, like we said, and it won't work. He has to specifically see his 3 sightings on one day and not on 3 days. We say it the opposite way. How do you know that's not what it is? He says, no, I'm a crawl because the pasuk said, "Zav is over, because it said the person who had his emission and the rule, and it's for a male and for a female. Makish zachar lekeva. So see that the Torah compared the male to the female. Just like the female, it becomes great on days. Also, we can't exclude the male from days also. Wait a minute, says the Gemara. Says if you're going to use a comparison, then do the other way. So compare the female to the male. Just like a man can see 3 times in one day. Also the woman can see 3 times in one day. The Gemara says no. He says Hamir Rahman of Zos. We told you already there was a limitation of the word Zos. Now, this is classic. What I'm about to do now happens over and over again. If I have one place in the Torah that's inclusive and one exclusive, let's take a look. The word Zos is what is coming to limit, is excluding and saying what? That the woman, we said the woman can only do days and not sightings on the same day. But we also had what? The comparison of male and female. We said that was to include that even the male can see on days and not limited to seeing, and even 3 days will be fine. So look, we always have a problem. Since we have one including and one excluding, why did you choose to include this case and to exclude that one? Do the reverse. That's called Mara'is. It happens over and over again. Why? Because I have one including, one excluding. Why'd you choose this one? Do the opposite. It's Gemara. Oh, it's just over and over again. So the Gemara says, Mara'is, why were you picking and choosing as you wish? He says, how do you know to include the male and exclude the female? Do the other way, exclude the male, exclude the male, and include the female. Gemara says, no, mistaba. He says, I'll tell you what. And this is also how the Gemara answers. Why? Because this is a common sense. He says, okay, when we see, when we see that that it's specific, when it's talking about sightings of the male, and it says here and only here, so it's coming to exclude what? It's coming to limit Rios. And therefore it must be saying that the woman can't have sightings alone, but she needs days. But if you're talking about seeing, okay, when you're talking about when you're talking about sightings, the word is by the Zav, don't forget. So when it's talking about sightings, you can't say that it's coming to limit days. It can't be. Okay, now yes. Okay, yes. Tanurabanan. I'm not always not sure what's happening. Tanurabanan. You said good. Tanurabanan. Okay, the rabbi says. Ezu muad. We said now. What is the forewarned animal? We learned in a brisa. Anybody now hold your hat on. Anybody who they testified against them. Any ox was testified 3 different days. Like we talk about Rabbi Huda. Bitam, what's a tam? We said in the tam, when does it go back to being a tam? When the kids bother it between its horns and it doesn't gore other people. Now, Div Rabbi Yossi, that is Rabbi Yossi. Now take a look, it's very strange because Rabbi Yossi took the first law, okay, about what's called the muad. We passed him like who? Like Rabbi Yehuda, okay, and yet when he came to returning to a tam, he passed him like who? Like Rabbi Meir. Okay, Div Rabbi Yossi, that's Rabbi Yossi. Okay, Rabbi Shimon Omer, muad kol shiva shlosha pa'amim. He says, what becomes a muad? Anytime they testified against him 3 times. Who's that? Like Rabbi Meir. V'lo amru shlosha yomim, and they never said 3 days. El chazar bavad. You only need 3 days for going back. Who's he paskening like Rabbi Yehuda? He went the other way. Amr Rav Nachman, Amr Rav Ada Baba halacha Rabbi Yehuda. But muad, so he said the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to becoming a muad. You need 3 days and not three testimony. Shari Rabbi Yossi, Modelo, because Rabbi Yossi admits to him. However, Rabbi Meir, but Allah follows Rabbi Meir when it comes to returning to Tam, that even in one day when the kids bother it, Shahari Rabbi Yossi Modelo. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi admits to him. So you see that when he says whatever Rabbi Yossi says, that's what we do. Amalei Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi said to Rabbi Nachman, I have a lema my halacha Rabbi Meir b'muad. Why don't you say the halacha follows Rabbi Meir by muad? Okay, Shahari Rabbi Shimon Modelo. Why you want to say Rabbi Yossi? Why don't you say Allah follows Rabbi Meir and becoming a muad? Because Rabbi Shimon said that Allah is like him. Allah Rabbi Yehuda b'tam. Why should Allah say Allah is like Rabbi Yehuda? Shahari Rabbi Shimon Modelo. No, because Rabbi Shimon says that way. Why did you decide to go with Rabbi Yossi against Rabbi Shimon? Amar Lei. So he said to him, Anak Rabbi Yossi spherically. Rabbi Yossi nimuki. He says no. He says I follow Rabbi Yossi because he has his reasoning with him. Over here we say because he has also reasoning and proofs, or he always has good reasoning. But no, we know that Yossi was particularly strong. Now we have this is a famous problem. The 3 days that we talk, let's talk 3 days for the moment. The 3 days that we said, what's the purpose? What did they establish? The Yudid Torah, are they really coming what? Are they really coming to forewarn the ox, so to speak? Or the Yudid Gavra? Or is it really coming what? For the man. The mind after me, what's the difference? What are you making a philosophical thing? The answer is the atu tlasi kite sadi b'chad yom. No, because what happens if all 3 sets of witnesses on the 3 gorings come in the same day? If you say the Torah, okay, if you say they're coming to warn the ox, Okay, so you did it. What's the problem? Okay, because they said that he brought on 3 different days. You understand? But in the same day. But it's told the testimony was in one day. But they said the ox scored in 3 days, so there's no problem. The ox scored 3 different days, but they all testified on this same day. They came on Sunday.
Does the owner have to be warned himself?
Well, that's what we're really talking about. Where's the emphasis? Let's take a look. The Amras here, the Yudi Gavra, but if you say the real emphasis is what? Is the warning of the owner, lo miyayid, it doesn't work. Why? Because he says, what are you talking about? He says, you warned me three times in one day. You only told me now. Here, I need to be told 3 times. So you told me you can't tell me 3 times in one day. I just found out. All of a sudden, you're all coming one day, and now I'm bingo. I'm stuck the next time. What did you do to me? Okay, so now that's what we have to talk about. Toshma. Now this is a little hard, but we have to try our best. Toshma, Einashon. So which is it? So is it work if all the 3 witnesses came in one day? Is it good because we're really warning, so to speak, the ox, establishing the ox? We have to establish the owner. Toshma, we said Einashon nasamuad achi idu b'fnei abayim. So here, take a look. We learned it. We learned in a brisa that what? That you cannot make an ox forewarned until they testify in front of the owners, or if they based it in front of the based it. Because it says, okay, and it has to be in front of based it. But if they testified in front of the court, but not in front of the owners, if they balim based in front of the owners, but not in front of the based in, it has to be both. You have to be in front of the owners and in front of the based in. Furthermore, okay, two witnesses testified about the first time. And two witnesses of the second one, and third one about the third time. Okay, Harikan Shloshe Dios. Now these are considered to be 3 separate testimonies. Notice when it comes to, for example, let's say we find that one of them they're relatives. They're disqualified as not good Indian, but the other so good. So one of them is that since they're 3 different things. If one of them is disqualified, the other 2 remain not disqualified. And it is the Lazamba. When it comes to the rule of conspiring witnesses, they're all considered one testimony. I'll explain what we mean. We have a rule. We learn from the conspiring witnesses are witnesses who testify to something. And then we have a second set of witnesses say that it was impossible for them to testify. Here, you testified that Yerushalayim, something happened at 2 o'clock. Yeah, Mano Yisrael, you were with us in Tel Aviv at that day, at that time. But we have a rule that, and conspiring witnesses, if they're found to be conspiring, they have to pay the money that they were trying to make the victim pay. But we have a rule, and we have a rule. If there are many witnesses, you have to in order to apply that punishment, all the witnesses who testified have to be found to be conspiring. So here we have an interesting rule. As far as the rule of the ox, there are 3 separate testimonies. And so if one group is found to be, for example, to be relatives, to be relatives, they're disqualified. The other 2 are still kosher. We still have 2 kosher warnings, okay? But as far as Hazama, they're all considered to be one. And if you don't find all of them to be conspired, then we can't apply the punishment. Nimtzes kas, let's take a look. Nimtzes kas rishonas amemes. The first case was found to be conspiring. They couldn't possibly have been there. Harikan shtei iduyos, okay. Okay, though okay, who potter, okay. So therefore, what? Okay, there are only 2 more kosher sets, okay. Who potter? So the owner obviously doesn't have to pay what on the 4th time doesn't have to pay full damages because there's only 2 warnings, okay. The hain paturim, nevertheless, they're only obligated for the half damage that they conspired, but not for what? Not for the whole. Okay, not for the extra Nezik Sholem, right?
Have 3 sets of witnesses.
Yes.
Each testifying, and 1 set is Hazama.
So right.
All 6 are gone.
So the point is like let's take a look. We're going to say what that whenever here they are. I'm going to explain it like this here. In order to make an ox forewarned, you needed the 3 testimonies, right? Okay, and you cannot and the answer is like this: the conspiring witnesses who all join together to do something, they all have to be found to be conspiring to apply the punishment of conspiring witnesses.
All 6.
Oh, that's the irony here. Why? As far as the testimonies, the discrete testimonies of each testimony, they're on their own. One is not affected by the other. If one turns out to be relatives, the other 2 are kosher. On the other hand, as far as hazama, as far as conspiring witnesses, they're considered to be one big testimony. And okay, that's not the argument, but so let's just understand it. They're considered to be one testimony. And why is that? Because remember, because he doesn't pay full damages until what? You need all three. If these two guys conspire to make him pay full damages, they still need the other two. They still need two to make that happen. They can't do it on their own. They can't on their own testify. They have to. It's themselves plus the other two. So it's all one as far as the extra, as far as the extra half.
Okay, so if the first are knocked out because they're relatives, why should it be any different if it's Hazama or relatives?
Because there are 2 different points. One is the discrete testimony. They testify on Sunday. They say he did this. On Monday they say he did it. Then Monday, Tuesday. That one thing has nothing to do with the other. But here, to get to the full one, they all need each other. Each discrete testimony. To say on Sunday he did it, I don't need the other witnesses. For me to say on Monday I did it, I don't need the other witnesses. The Tuesday guys don't need the other 2 witnesses. But here, I'm showing you because if the Tuesday, let's say the Wednesday guys are about to make him now pay full damages, they still can't do it on their own. They still need the other 2 to have said that they did it on Sunday and Monday. You can't get out of it. They can't do the extra half. They can conspire by themselves. But even though they're the only conspirers, they can't successfully conspire on the second half without the help of the other 2, even though the other guys are not conspirers. Stick with me for a second. Nimtze kashi. Okay, so you said what? If there's different nimtze kashliya zomemes. Okay, if the second group turns out to be conspirators, I kind of edus echad. Okay. Again, what is still one? Okay, you still have one left. Okay, that wasn't conspired. Okay, and we say what? So those you have one's conspirators. You still have 2 that are good. 2 conspirators. You still have one. Yeah, if I didn't translate correctly, you still have 1 that's good. Okay, now the who pater two. So still what? So right, okay, he doesn't have to pay full damages, and they don't have to pay the second half up for conspiring. Nimtzes kashlishis omemes. But now, if I find that what also the third group was conspiring, then kulan chayavim. Then they have to pay the extra half damages. Why? Because now they succeeded, right? Okay, balzenemar, and that's why it says vasisulo. One second, balzenemar. It says vasisulo kasher zomam. That's what Torah was telling us. Yeah.
You now have a total of 6 aides.
Yes.
That are conspiring to cause the guy to pay $1,000 instead of 5.
All conspired?
That's the last case.
That's what Gemara just said. If it happened that all 6 conspired, because you can't become a full payer until you have 3 sets of 2.
Right.
So if 2 of them are thrown out, you only have 2 sets of 2, so you only have to pay half.
What's the question?
But a bunch of guys get together, and we want to nail Schwartz. We're gonna all lie and say he killed the bull gourd. My ox Monday, yours Tuesday, is Wednesday. So now my question is: do they split up the $1,000, or each cot pays 1,000, or each aide pays 1,000?
I'm gonna save this for afterwards, and I'll clarify. Let me explain the Gemara, and I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you now. So the Gemara is in the middle of a question. I just showed you these laws. Now the Gemara says, "Listen, let me answer kasha. We're asking whether the emphasis is on the owner or the emphasis on who is on the bull. What's the difference? Because whether can I have all the witnesses in one day or not? Okay. E amras the futur shapi. He says now the fact that we said this law, I can understand why all the 3 are considered one testimony when it comes to conspiring, because it's really about the ox, okay, and therefore what, okay, and it's because they all could have come on the same day, and since they all could have come on the same day, we can also see that they conspired, okay. Now, if you say they could all come on one day, we can also see that they all conspired together. But he says, "L.A.E. If the truth is what that it's for the owner, and they really can't come on one day, okay? Then how can we ever say that all the 6 gathered together? Yeah, how can it be? Since they came on separate days, the people who come first, they say what? The first guys can say, how did I know somebody's going to come after 3 days and they're going to do it? How can I possibly? How do I supposed to know that they were going to do their job? You can't say I conspired with them." Rabbi Ashi says, "Amisa the Shmaisa." So I said this whole analysis. I made the Rav Kahana in front of Rav Kahana. Amalei kind of said to me, no, he says, the Yudi Torah, he says, what? He says, 1 second. If that's the question you're asking, that even if the purpose is to, so to speak, is really for the sake of, so to speak, is the ox, and really what? And they could come in one day. Mi nicha, you think that makes sense? Lemar nach bachsroi. It doesn't make a difference. At least the last group that came, the first two that came on the one day, they clearly knew that they were about to make full damages. Why? Because it's the victim of the third time that's bringing them. And if the victim of the third time slept them to court, so first Group 1 and Group 2 know that they're coming to join in a 3-time. They're coming to join in a 3-time testimony. But the last guy, even on the one day, he says, how do I know? How do I know all these guys coming to court? We're coming to testify against this ox. The first guys, they knew because the third guy brought him. But he said, what do I know? He says, he can say, but me, he says, I was only coming for half damages. Why can you make me obligated on this? He says, no, that's not a problem. He says, if you talk for the ox, my kasha is good against the guys who hold what? That it's for the guy, and there's not a kasha against the ones who hold that it's for the ox. Why? Because even if it's for the ox, I'm going to say either third group on that one day, or you can say I didn't know that the other guys were lying. I didn't that they were conspirators. How do I join with them? I'll tell you how we know. We could even know that. Why? Rav Ashi, we give 3 answers. One, the Karmanzi Ramuzi. We see the first guy signaling to the second guy, so we know that they're all involved. Rav Ashi Amar Kashabar Ritzufim. Or no, when they come one hard upon the other. So we know what everybody knows. When they're coming against each other, they all know what they're doing in court. Last case is a little difficult. It's a case like this. It's where the last guys come and they say that they saw an ox gore from the guy's herd, but they don't know which ox. Okay, and they were found to be conspiring witnesses. And we know that they were doing it to make it forewarned. Why? Because they can't be there to do the half damage. Why? Because they don't know what ox it is. Half damages come out of the body of the ox. You must know the ox. To pay half damages, you have to know the ox. So the only reason they could be coming is to say, well, we saw it. And later when somebody will come and say it was a muad ox, okay, they'll pay. Okay. Okay. He says what? So how do they warn him? Because they say Tura Nakana Islach Bakrach says you have a goring ox among your oxen. You have to do it. Afterwards, someone will come and identify you. It's okay. So therefore, we showed clearly. We showed clearly a side to say what? That is specifically for the ox and not for the owner. We asked the following query. Let's say Reuben sicks Shimon's dog on Levi. He sicks somebody else's dog on the guy. Meshasa, okay, he says, okay, I know that the insider is exempt because that's called a groma. It's called an indirect action. He didn't do the damage. But what's the rule of the dog owner? Okay, does he have to pay or doesn't he have to pay? Okay, why? How come I don't know? Do we say what did he says to him? He says, listen, I didn't do anything. He says, what do you want from my life? I didn't do anything. Okay. He says, no, the owner of the dog says, I didn't do anything to you. The other guy sicked them on you. Oh, dear Marmina, we say to him, no. The Kabbalah to Meshata say, since you know your dog is of such a nature that when somebody incites it, it gets incited. You shouldn't have kept such a dog around. In other words, are you liable for having an incitable dog or not? That's the question.
And this goes back to the bull or the owner.
Okay, good. Okay, now Amar Zera says, "Come, I'll bring you a proof." Okay, I'll show you. Here we remember in our Mishnah. Why we bring this question up here? Because that's to do with our Mishnah. Didn't learn by Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir told us for Tom what's called. How does it go back? Has to be what the kids are inciting it, so to speak. They're bothering it. It doesn't bore anybody. But what's the inference? If the kids incite it and it does gore, chayav. We're gonna have to pay. So you see, no, you have to pay. So therefore, what? You see what? You have to pay. No, you have to pay for the goring. Okay. Now, even though who incited it? The kids. So you see what? So you see a proof. You see a proof that we make the owner of the incitable animal pay. Okay, even though somebody else incited it. Amar Abaye says, get out of here. Get out of here. How do you make such an inference? He says, Mi katani nogach chayev. Did it teach me what? That if it did go, it's obligated? Dilma what? Nogach lavi tam. It just means what? If it gored, it's not it's not a tam. That's all. If it gored, it's not it's not a tam. Pardon me. It doesn't go. No, if it gored, it doesn't go back to its innocence. I didn't say don't go into but what? But for that goring, okay, for that goring itself, he's not obligated. If it goes back to gores unincited, it doesn't return to being tom. But it's not saying that it's not saying that he has to pay for this goring. Maybe what if this goring was incited by somebody else? You don't have to pay. So therefore, you didn't prove your point. When somebody incites an animal to do damage, does the owner of the animal have to pay? Tashma, again, I'll try and bring you a proof. We learned, remember, we learned this earlier. We had the Mishnah. A person incited a dog on somebody or incited a snake on somebody, okay, or made them bite the guy, whatever it is. Pater is exempt. My law, Pater Mashasa, to make the same Pater Mashasa, make the inference. It's the inciter who is exempt. But the owner of the animal has to pay. What's his law? Again, you don't make that inference.
What if somebody incites it who doesn't own that cow?
That's what we're talking. That's the case. That's the case we're asking about. He says, "Lo, don't make that inference. Why? Aim a potter off mashasa. Not only is the owner exempt, but also, and I've told you this many times, and I reiterate because not only is it important in Gemara, it's important in life. You have to understand inferences don't prove anything. They might be reasonable, they might be not. Later, I'll show you this on paper. We'll have more advanced classes. Is that inferences that are based on word or word order are not scientific. They're linguistic. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But only inferences made on subjects or predicates are mathematically and logically sound. All the other ones, and that's why when everything more, yep, it could be, but I can say not. You can just whoever screams louder, basically. It doesn't prove anything. And that's the Gemara that we watch out for inferences. And you know what? And we're early. In a minute, I'll show you something interesting. Let me just finish, and I'll show you something interesting. Amar Rava. Rava says, "Im timtze lo mashasa kabel shechavero bechavero shisahu chavero chayev." If you're going to say what? That a person inciting his friend's animal, okay, to do the damage, that the owner of the animal is obligated. We didn't solve the problem. But let's say, okay, you'll take one side. If you'll say that the owner of the animal is responsible for owning an incitable animal, let me answer this question. She saw who ba'atzmo, okay, potter. Even if you say what? That if you say that the guy when Reuben incites Shimon's animal, that what? If you tell me what, that Shimon is obligated. But if the damagee incited the dog, the damagee went up to the guy's dog and said, "You're a dirty dog, you're a dumb dog," and the dog attacks him. He said for sure the owner of the dog is exempt. If somebody incites somebody else's dog and the dog attacks him, the owner is exempt. He says, my time. But what's the reason? He says, famous principle. Anybody who does something weird, acts abnormally, and then the animal abnormally attacks him, the owner of the animal is exempt. Now, what? Be careful. Now we're going to try and tie this to a famous principle that we learned earlier, but he's going to say, no, don't tie me. Amarle Rav Papa Rabbi, he says, wow. He says, earlier we learned this together. Reish Lakish says, like you. Remember, Reish Lakish said, we learned this earlier. 2 cows are in the public domain. One is sitting down, crouching down, which is abnormal, sitting down in the public domain, Miller Street, and the other one is walking, and the other one's walking. And the walking one kicked abnormal damage, kicked the one crouching, sitting. Patura, the one who kicked, is exempt. Okay, but if the one who is sitting kicks the one that is walking, she has to pay. Obviously, that's Karen abnormal damage. So you see what was the reason why? Why was the walking animal exempt for kicking the crouching animal? Because the crouching animal did something. Okay, well, let's just once again. Let me just do this simply. So why is it that the one that's walking is not liable for kicking the one that's sitting? Because the one that's sitting was weird. It was acting weird. You act weird, I can act weird. She said, no, don't compare the two cases. I only said what I said in my case, and I don't agree in Reish Lakish's case. I don't have to say why.
The weird one kicks the other one, he is responsible?
When the weird one gets kicked, the other one's exempt.
Yeah, but what if the weird one kicks the other
he's
one?
Obligated. If the sitting one kicks the walking one, he's obligated. The walking one kicks the sitting one who's weird, he's not obligated. if a person makes a weird move, the other guy's weird damage of carrot, he's not obligated. Amar le. So Rabbi said to Rav, he said, don't compare the two cases. Anabahi. In my case, what I said is true. If you incite your friend's animal and he attacks you, your friend is not obligated because you acted weird. He's not obligated. Chiyuvi, okay, but in the case of Reish Lakish, where the animal was crouching and the other animal was walking, and the walker kicked the croucher, I would say he has to pay. Chiyuvi Chavda, I would say he would pay. Why? Because I say to him, listen, okay, look, I acted weird. You can walk over me. You're right. I shouldn't be sitting in the middle of the marketplace. You want to keep walking? You can walk on top of me. He says, the booty be less than vision. But who said you're allowed to kick me? Yeah, you're right. You can, and I told you, Rabbi Auerbach Sitzal, and it's important to hear. See, I don't see it so much here, thank God. But later it gets to be a problem. When it gets very crowded, it's a problem. You're not allowed to stand in the walk where the walkways belong to the community. They're there for a reason. Can't daven in the walkway. You're not allowed to daven in the walkway. A guy does that. We don't give him all the rights of a davener. Don't daven in the walkway. Don't get me started. And don't get me started. And then there's other problems we have to talk about. I want to show you something. I've done this for you before. I want to show you why inferences are not airtight. Listen to this. I'm going to make up a medrash. Please don't quote this. There's no such medrash in the world. I'm gonna write you a medrash. You ready? Get ready. Oh, I'm writing a medrash. Get ready. Get ready. Yeah, get ready. Get ready. Oh, my Rav Ploni says Rabbi X. There's no such medrash. No such story. I'm making it. Rav Ploni says, Ein l'cha bo'olam, ein l'kadosh baruch hu bo'olamo. Kadosh Baruch Hu has nothing in his universe. Ela o shamayim o aretz. There's only heaven and earth. And that's it. There's nothing else in the world. Why? Shenemar. How do I know? Shenemar, because the pasuk says, "Reishis v'alakim es hashamayim v'es haaretz." Hashem the beginning. Hashem created heaven and earth. Shamayim v'aretzim, heaven and earth. Yes. Something else not. So there's nothing else in the universe except for heaven and earth. Whatever you see has to be classified as what? Heaven or earth. Amrav Moni lochein. He says it's not true. Hashem does indeed have in his universe that which is neither heaven nor earth. Shenamar says, Reshis? It's not like some Rishonim. It was only in the beginning. There's only heaven and earth. After Reshis, Amar of Moni says Rabbi C. Lochein, it's not true. Kadosh Baruch Hu does indeed have in his universe that which is neither heaven or earth. Shenemar Reshis Bora Elokim Shemaim. By Nivroim, it's only by created things. Ein lo ba'olam lo shemaim. He has only heaven or earth. Aval ba'bilti Nivroim in the uncreated. I'm just teasing. Okay. Yesh lo ba'olam. This goes on forever. Later, I'll show you on paper how to do this. Now, so what do? The Gemara uses linguistic inferences. The answer is watch. You have to be the last man standing. And this I'll show you on paper and I'll show you. You have to be the last man. What does that mean? If you make a linguistic inference, you must remove all other intelligent possibilities. If you come to me and say, listen, you have to get up early in the morning. I say, I have to get up early in the morning? No, you don't. Just no, the Torah says you do. I said, where'd you get that from? It says when Avram went out to bind his son, he said, Yashkim, got up early. I said, nah, get out of here. He says, Avram gets up early, not me. What are you talking about? He says, no, you don't understand to read it. You said, don't read it. He says, no. The Gemara is saying, Hashem is saying, it goes without saying that schleppers like you have to get up early. You barely serve God. But he lets you know that even Abraham, who thought of nothing else, gets up early. Everybody has to get up early. This game can go on forever. You understand? Linguistic inferences are as long as you have an intelligent mind, it can go on forever. Unless you can remove every intelligent possibility, it doesn't work. The Gemara does it. It does work. It does work, but it's hard. Okay, I'll show you the other way. Mathematical inferences are good.
What about his question that he asked about who pays?
Oh, so now I'm ready to hear. What's the question over here? You want to know if they usually they divide.
The two divide the penalty.
Yeah.
But here we have 6.
Yeah.
So I want to know.
Usually, I think it's pretty much as I recall from Makos, it's divided among all the Zomis.
And
I,
this
I'm gonna
egg
double
sits
check.
there.
So-
Can only one
so-
talk at a
So,
time,
rather than
please.
me make a mistake, I'll double check and I'll come back. Just to make sure I make,
And
to
this
make sure I'm
egg
correct.
I
sits
thought
Yeah, I'm gonna take a look.
I thought I read once that
Right.
if a shor
I'm gonna double check.
a
Yeah.
and he's sold to somebody or he's loaned to somebody,
There
he
is a
starts
Mishnah
all
like
over again as a Tom.
Coming
That's
up.
a
Come, stay
Mishnah.
tuned.
There is a
Right?
Mishnah.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Oh, it's
But
gonna be.
see, well, my problem is as follows.
Yeah.
If all six conspire,
Yeah.
if you say that
Yeah.
they see the first set requires. Let's
No,
say
I know. I hear your point. I just gotta double check. I don't want to make a mistake. I'll double check. Make sure I'm correct.
In a partnership,
Yeah, but
each
if the
partner is
first two
responsible.
only have to pay
I
half
have to
of
check,
half.
yeah.
The second
No,
two
no.
only have to
Each
pay
partner,
half of
yeah.
half, and the third two have to
Depends if
pay
it's
half
limited, no.
each.
But if a
If
regular
it's
partnership,
just
each
simple
can go to
divide.
any partner and
Because
get the
pair
whole thing.
one are only
You're
giving
right.
half
From
Chatzinezek.
Yes,
Pair
unless
two are
he's
giving
limited.
No, if they're all conspiring, then
Limited
each one is
partner.
doing the half. Each one is.
And that's what my problem is.
I'm gonna come back. I'm just gonna clarify mine. I'll tell
They
you.
should have to
I'll tell you. I'll tell you.
They
everything.
should have to split up
One half.
two. No, two.
Okay, so I told you I'm gonna
Because
double. I'm
two
gonna.
halves plus
I
a
hear it.
whole.
So I don't want to make a mistake. I'm gonna come back and tell you.
Mordechai, what do you think is the answer?
I think that's what I just said. I think they have to split up two.
What do you mean two?
Half to the first goring, half to the second goring, whole